Need a sneaky little crankbait that's gonna get bit right behind other anglers? That's right, I'm getting prepared for my next Elite Series event, and got a bunch of crankbaits out here. Got my Little Johns, my Fat Johns, Little John XLs, but there's a new Little John that's a bad dude, especially for lakes and rivers that get a lot of pressure. Maybe the bass are getting keyed in on little small bait fish. A lot of the lakes, even in the pre-spawn, are getting a ton of pressure. So, you know, big square bills, things like that, you're gonna catch a few fish, but if you wanna go right behind anglers and catch some fish, the Little John Micro is the deal. And we came out with the Little John Micro DD a couple years ago. It's the smallest crankbait that gets the deepest, period. Great BFS style crankbait, catching bass, again, right behind other anglers that they can't get a tiny crankbait down that deep. Now, we've come out with the smaller, shallower version, and this thing is bad news. I've got one rigged up. I'll show you my setup here in just a second, but that's the crankbait right there. And as you can see, when you put it next to the Little John, it's significantly smaller than the regular Little John. And this is the rattling version, same size as the original, but that's the rattling version. There is no loud knocker, rattle, any kind of thing like that. Some of the weights will move a little bit in the Micro. Little John gives it just a tiny bit of sound. Helps those fish find that little crankbait. And that's right, I've got it tied onto a bait caster. If you have the right kind of setup, you need the right rod, you need the right reel, you can definitely cast it with a bait caster. You don't have to. You can definitely throw it with a spinning rod. Make sure you have a really soft rod, because it's a small crankbait, yet there's number 6 Gamakatsu treble hooks on there. So we got super sharp, good. They're not like 10s or 8s or, you know, they're not a crappie crankbait. You'll probably catch plenty of crappie on this thing. But this bait runs about 2 to 3 feet. Great for rivers, great for stained water lakes where you're gonna have a population of bass in less than 3 feet of water, and you've got some harder bottoms or grass that's, you know, 2 to 3 feet under the surface. That's really where that Little John Micro is going to shine. You know, got all the regular colors. This is Cellmate. I'd probably say, you know, Cellmate and Chartreuse Blackback, probably the two that I could go with. Maybe Spring Crawl, those 3, and I could just run wild on it. But the line that I'm going to be throwing this on is important. I've got 8-pound Sunline FC. You might be able to bump up to 10, but on a crankbait that's that small, that's this small, line size is very important. If you try to put this thing on 12, you might be able to cast it, but this bait and any other bait that's this small is not going to be able to have the right amount of action to where that bait's going to hunt around. It's going to deflect off of cover and really trigger those strikes. With a crankbait, that is the whole deal. Grinding that thing off the bottom, grinding it off of stumps, the tops of grass, things like that. Take that computer chip bill right there. Take that thing and let it grind. It's going to hit harder than a regular plastic lip. That's the reason that we did that in the original Little John. Is it causes a harder sound when it's hitting the bottom, and I think that triggers more fish than the regular plastic lip. That's just my personal opinion. But that's the deal right there. 8-pound Sunline Crank FC. I've got this. I really like throwing on an Icon bait finesse rod. This is the BFS 610, and it is very limber. It is very limber, but remember, it's a small crankbait. I mean, I think you can kind of see that in the background there, but that rod is very soft. But that allows you to throw that, and then 2, dude, those fish don't come off. I mean, they get a big mouthful of that thing, and then they go making big runs. Once that rod loads up, man, that head shake, I mean, even on smaller fish, I mean, honestly, sometimes a 12 to 14 inch bass can be a day maker. You know, if you can get that fish that fills out your limit, or, you know, you say you have 2 or 3 good quality fish and you can't get your third and fourth and fifth one, you're out there fishing, and man, all of a sudden, skies get a little clearer, there's still some shad up, you can't get a bite on anything else. Come bring out that tiny crankbait, start zipping it around, and remember, one of the biggest tips with little tiny crankbaits like this that are up shallow, don't feel like you have to slow down. A lot of these fish, I feel like it's a total reaction bite. You're making that cast, get that soft rod, and then you're going to be cranking it and reeling it with some speed. Bang, 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 hits the cover. Maybe you stop it and hesitate it and then keep it going. The Little John Micro has a slow float, so that it's not like super buoyant to where it comes up. So if you pause it, it'll sit there in their face for just a second as it's slowly getting out of the way of that piece of cover. And then the final piece is that you want to have a very quality casting reel. You do not want to have, you know, like your lowest end reel for throwing a small bait like this on a bait caster. This is the 7 GSC, and I have it on a 7-3. I like a little faster reel. Like I said, speed catches a lot of these fish. 7.3 to 1 gear ratio, so a faster gear ratio. This thing will zip it out there as far as you're going to need it, and when you get it going, not going to have any problems. You know, getting those fish, and you have to have your drag set just right. But really, you're going to be fighting the fish with the rod because it's so limber. But that is the deal. And as you can see, you know, in comparison to the Little John XL, it's a giant. It's a giant. But the Little John XL gets quite a bit deeper. It gets about 10 feet deep. But there's the comparison against the Little John. So it's significantly smaller than the Little John. Just a really good presence for throwing it. We're getting ready to go to a river system in that Pasquotank River, the whole Albemarle Sound. I mean, James River, Chickahominy River. Big bass, little baits. There's a lot of little bait fish. And I've been, had my eyes open in the last year to 2 years on how fish really get keyed into bait size no matter how big the fish are. And what I mean by that is that, you know, early in my career, there was a phenomenon where, you know, we went out to California with the Bassmaster Elite Series. We were, you know, a lot of guys were using big baits and catching a lot of big fish. And it was consistent over there. You could use big baits out west, big, you know, boot tails, you know, some glides back then, and you could bring them back east. You could catch a few fish in Texas. There were spots around the country, Tennessee, Virginia, Florida, wherever, that you could catch some big fish. But I think if you dig into it, what you'll find is that they have bigger bait fish in those lakes where those bigger baits work. So out west, you have a lot of trout and things like that. That's where those bigger baits, those fish are like keyed in on looking for big stuff. And if you go around the country, that's why I think big baits, glide baits, are scattered. Some lakes, Texas, Tennessee, Virginia, like I mentioned, some lakes, the big baits work and do great. And that's why, you know, I think, but you have, those lakes have gizzard shad, or they have trout or something like that. That's why, you know, you go to some of these Joe Cassie, wherever out western North Carolina, guys throw big baits and catch some huge fish. Well, they have trout there. So those are trout eaters. Those fish are looking for 12, 14, 16-inch trout that they can go up there and crush, you know, those big bass. So they're programmed to look for big profiles in their bait. The same thing goes on lakes that don't have many big baits. If your lake does not have trout, if it does not have any type of gizzard population, those fish will get programmed to looking for small threadfin shad, small baby bluegill, They'll be looking for small crawfish. The majority of all crawfish are small. They'll be keyed in on small baits. So I know of a lake that used to be a great big bait lake. They dumped a bunch of threadfin shads and now they will not touch a big bait, but they're catching a couple big stringers on little tiny baits because those big fish have gotten programmed to eat the tiny baits. So I say all that to say that little crankbait, I'm telling you, dude, do not sleep on a micro-sized crankbait. That little crankbait, I mean, the Little John size, the Little John action is proven, 15 years proven, and now we have the micro version, which is an even smaller version. I mean, that is the size of a lot of the little minnows in river systems, a lot of little, golden shiners, little baby golden shiners in different parts of the country. So don't sleep on those little baits catching those big bass or just numbers of bass. Either one. Go catch fish and have a lot of fun. Anybody has any comments or any other experiences similar, drop it down there. We want to hear what you have to say. And like always, we appreciate you watching.